Hey everyone, welcome back to the Not Just Politics podcast. The following is a conversation with Chris Rolinson. He is a professor and the chair of the School of Communication at Point Park University. We sat down to discuss his time in the world of media, the political landscape of the United States, and more. I hope you enjoy this episode. All right. Professor Chris Rolinson.
Hello.
Welcome to the Not Just Politics podcast.
All right.
Thanks for
Glad to be
joining
here.
us.
Yeah.
I know you're a busy guy. We're a little bit of a different recording time here. It is currently Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's -5 or something outside today.
It's 11 degrees outside in Pittsburgh, and there's ice everywhere, and this window is leaking
cold air.
while the vent is putting out hot air.
All right.
So I don't know what that's going to do. Hopefully nothing bad. But there's just a cold draft coming through, the very cold draft coming through the window, which is nice because the studio in here is normally 95 degrees every time we record. But anyway, so you wear many hats over here at Point Park.
I'm actually wearing a hat.
You are wearing a hat, but there's a lot more underneath that
Yeah.
that people can't see.
That's true.
You are the chair of the School of Communication.
Yes.
You are a professor of photojournalism.
Yes.
There's others as well, though.
Other professorships, you mean? Like, I mean, I can teach photography, photojournalism, mass media literacy, any intro to journalism class I could do, but I'm not a public relations person.
Right.
I love public relations, and I feel like I'm an aficionado of it, and I do it in my private life, but I'm not ready to teach public relations.
Yeah. No, that's
not my jam.
No, that's not for me either. You're also you're involved with something called Start Point Media.
Yeah, that's my my side hustle business, and you've done your research, but that business is probably going to fold up shop this year simply because of the volume. When I became a professor, I had to that was officially, I think, in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, I've been, winding the business down. I haven't advertised, but
Right.
there was a long tail that went on for over a decade where clients were still calling me or whatnot. And so I think this year, coming up in 2024, I think this will be the year where I won't get any phone calls.
Right.
And I'll be able to shut the business down and, for the IRS, right? So they're
Right.
happy. So that's it.
Right. So what made you start that in the first place?
Well, when I graduated from college, I went to Slippery Rock, and then my first job was at a newspaper, a daily newspaper in Steubenville, Ohio, and and from there I learned pretty quickly, that sitting at the photo desk that, you'd pick up the phone and, there'd be somebody from the AP or the Baltimore Sun or some other newspaper that was looking for a photograph from the area. And I just simply needed a way to account for my freelance work.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever I left the newspaper job and became a freelancer, all of that was already in place, and I could just transition from, daily newspaper work to freelance journalism. So.
Yeah, so that's like a side business then that you've been running
Yeah.
for a while. That was long time. Yeah.
So I think I started that business in 2001, but like I said, it's really not at this point in time, it's really not active as much as it has used to as it has been in the past.
Yeah, because I imagine your responsibilities at Point Park have increased
Yes.
over time,
Yes.
and since you wear so many hats, as you can only do so many things.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that.
Yeah, I was telling, there was a photographer that came to, he works in the area, and he came to talk to me about, photography and about what it's like to teach here. And, basically that's the conversation that we had, was the fact that I've really cut out, unless somebody calls me and has a big check attached, I'm usually turning down the gig. Right. And that's kind of what we came to the conclusion is that for me right now, responsibly, in my job is to be responsible to the students first. And so I've decided that, my side business, is not really a thing that I should be focusing any time on except for what the IRS tells me I have to do.
Right. And then you gone to Chatham. You studied at Chatham. Then you studied at Point Park.
Yes.
And then you came back.
Yes.
And you also went to school at Slippery
Well,
Rock.
the order of operations would be Slippery Rock for my undergraduate, uh, Point Park for my first master's degree, and that was in 2002 or three.
Hmm.
And then I went to Chatham to get a terminal degree, an MFA in film. So it's all sort of, my career is all sort of related. And ironically, when it comes to when it does come to the side hustle business, that's what I'm getting calls for is video and not
Right.
photography. So it kind of all meshed together and worked out. So
Yeah, and you've done some work with film
yeah.
as well. You've also done that. So
Yeah.
you kind of dipped your toe into all aspects of the media world.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I think I recognized at some point that that media, if you're just going to consume media, you're not going to get the full story, right? So I mean, so like whenever we're making media, we need to understand the full story and what it is, what power we have here to influence people, because information, communication. I mean, that all can be informative, educational, or it can be propaganda, right? So you have to kind of have to be mindful of that and being aware of that.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite in that area? Do you have something that you sort of gravitated to first? Or was there just kind of an experimenting with all the different mediums?
Well, no. What happened was, when I was in college, in my undergraduate at Slippery Rock, I was the general manager of the radio station, WRSK, and and so I had been involved with the radio station my entire career at Slippery Rock. For the first day I went, that was like the first thing I did when I moved into my apartment. Is I got my stuff set my pillow down, and I went to the radio station. Like, it was like that was the goal for what I wanted to do, there. And then so when I got there, I started to get interested in politics and whatnot. And then I found myself the speaker of the student senate, right? So I'm the general manager of the radio station, speaker of the student senate. All of a sudden, I've got a microphone, right? I've got a platform. And so it was at that point that I realized that, like, wow, this is, I have some things here. And then so I started writing at that point, and got on the student newspaper at that same time. And then whenever I left university, went to work, at the newspaper, I focused pretty much on photojournalism. And then when I got to the point of my career where I was doing side hustle, it expanded into video and expanded into some social media work that we did for a couple of companies. Right as social media was coming and evolving, we jumped right on that and got a couple of clients to do that. And then as I got older, and got more involved in my community, my communication skills. I offered them up to, like, the community organization in my town, Coriopolis Community Development Corporation. And, and I basically became like a media advisor for them. That's kind of like from that experience and a couple of others, that's kind of where I learned, the public relations angle of the thing. So I'm a practitioner, I'm a aficionado, but I'm not studied in it at all. It's just something that, like, as an evolution, that like all the media just kind of collide in my space. So
Right. And you spent 5 years in the military
I did.
as well. You were in the Army.
Yes, from 1992 to 1997.
And you were, oh gosh, if I can remember correctly, you worked a helicopter crew chief?
Yeah, I did a couple different things in the military, right? No surprise, right?
Yep.
I mean, so when I joined the military, I was a communications specialist, and so that was a little bit of radio stuff, talking on the radio a little bit, but all of that was like all functional, like, command and control things. But the major part of that gig was setting up communication systems. So this was at a point in history where they were transitioning from, like, hardwired telephones to cell networks. So that was my first exposure to cell phones, was that we set up LAN networks, and I was like, okay, this is cool. It's different than the wired systems that we had. So whenever we would go out and set up as practice, like in the military, my job basically was to take a spool of cable, run it from the radios that I was in control of in my truck, and run them out to every single tent, so that the commanders and the officers in there had a way to communicate. So essentially, I was the funnel. Like, all the communications came through me, and then I was responsible for getting that communication out to the people in the field, which mainly meant, since we were in aviation, I had to make sure that any communication that someone, like if somebody called me from the ground, I had to be able to patch them through to the commander who is 300 miles away in a helicopter. And so that was the challenging part of the job, and I learned a lot about the technical, and that's kind of what, when I got to college, I think that was something that really helped, was the fact that like I walked into the radio station, I knew what a lot of the things were. I was not unfamiliar with the gear, and so I think that kind of helped a lot.
Were you deployed overseas?
I was not. The closest I would have come would have been to there was a proposed invasion of Haiti, right? And I think it was like
Oh, good.
1991, right? Yeah, they proposed. It's like awesome.
Good.
Yeah. And well, there were some things happening. Of course, this was and we could talk about that, about how media convinces people that war is a great idea.
I would love to get into that.
And so. And so basically there was a problem, there was a problem out there, in Haiti. And then, our unit was, stationed, we were at, what was then Fort Rucker, Alabama. It's now Fort Novosel. They got rid of the Confederate name, thankfully.
Was it that they didn't have freedom and they hated us because of our freedom, and if we just gave it to them, it would be fine?
I don't know what the political motivations for it were, but I'm sure the central bank had something to do with it. And but I mean, essentially, like when you're on the ground in the military, like the whole political thing that goes beyond it, is really difficult to decipher, because you're in the middle of this like thing.
Yeah.
It's like way bigger than you. You have zero control over the direction it's going. And so it just, being in the military can get kind of wild. But I was fortunate that the day before we were supposed to leave, like we were getting the stuff together. We were starting to organize ourselves
to invade Haiti.
To go. We would have been in the second wave, right? And so,
Right.
and to for full disclosure, our like where I would have been stationed, right, during this invasion would have been Key West.
Okay.
Right. And so
Right.
all of these dudes would have flown over on the helicopter to do it. And I would have been like in Key West, hanging out on the beach. So
You would have
like,
been in Florida.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, so how does that work? I don't know. But but needless to say, they called that invasion off, and it became it was a humanitarian effort after that, because they weren't calling my unit in for peace. That's for sure. So
And I'd imagine one of the things that makes it confusing and kind of wild to be in the military is that you're getting messages from the top that are telling you a certain thing, but they have interests and they have their job to do. And it's probably just hard to figure out like what's what.
Well, I'm, at that point though, I'm not really in a position, like at that position, you're not in a position to question it. I mean, it's just all, at that point I became a mediator of information. I took information from one place and made sure it got to where it was supposed to go, at the end. And I really could not focus on the content, or was not allowed to. And some of the stuff that came through was above my clearance level. So those things were all encrypted, and I didn't know what they said anyway. So
yeah, that's a crazy thing about that kind of encryption. I have one of my brother's friends works for Lockheed Martin in like their satellite program or whatever. He's obviously not allowed to tell us what he does. He could tell us anything, and it's like it's not. But he was like the compartmentalization of information in those places is so heavily monitored.
Yeah.
He was saying it to the point where if he goes into someone's office to talk to them about a project, if they don't have the right name tag, he's just not allowed to talk to them about it, which is nuts. And I've heard similar stuff from other people that work in those places, and that to me is just, I wouldn't be able to do it. I would be gone after day one because I'd forget.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've always been sort of a rabble rouser or a rebel, and just sort of like, nonconformist, and and that's not a good attitude to have, in the military, because I would ask questions, and I was told to stand down more than once because of the line of questioning I was taking was not appropriate for my level of pay.
Right.
Right. And,
Yeah.
And because it just was people would just remind me that that's not your clearance level.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, thank you.
I wonder if that's used as a way to like dismiss.
Absolutely.
Like even if it is in your clearance level, they're just like, get out of here. I would say that the military, I mean, it's
first and foremost, it communicates, right? That's the first thing that it does. Like before it does anything else, it controls the message, right? So they control, the media message in the space where they're at. It's like how when you look at like Afghanistan or Iraq, that the media was embedded with units, and then, they would strategically pick the units for these people to go to so that they can kind of, they know that they're not going to send this unit into this certain space and they're going to avoid that message won't make it to the media if there's no reporter embedded, and so, yeah, I mean, it just they're in control of, their information systems is basically, I would think that would be at this point in time would be the number one job of the military is to control the information from a space.
Was there any part of you that wanted to go back after 9/11?
No, not really. My official discharge ended on my birthday in 2000, right? So the year 2000 I was out. And so I had, for a little while there before September 11th, I had toyed around with the idea of joining the Air National Guard at the Pittsburgh airport. But, I don't know, in conversation with, people at that time, it ended up, I didn't pursue that. So, and then after I made that decision, my interest in being a part of the military was over. So after September 11th, I had no nostalgia to go back.
Right.
Do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the craziest things still. I mean, I talk about it a lot on the show. I'm a broken record over here, but what are you going to do? One of the craziest things that I wasn't alive on 9/11, and I was, because if I remember correctly, in 2005 was really when we officially started, or was it before that we had started military operations in the Middle East?
Man, they had military operations in the Middle East since the end of World War II. Like,
right.
General Norman Schwarzkopf. That's a name from the past. You'd have to look that up. He was the commander of the military during Desert Storm, but his father was an ambassador to Iran. So General Norman Schwarzkopf, at the end of World War II, was sitting with his father in Iran, and then here he is, 50 years later, he's the guy that leads the invasion, into Iraq. So it was, yeah.
But that's nuts. But one of the crazy things is like what the messaging was from the U.S. government, and it's that Osama bin Laden hates us because we have freedom.
Well, it goes even back before that, because they said the same thing about Saddam Hussein. Right, that he's he's a dangerous cat. He's doing this, he's doing that, and then, then I don't know. It's all stagecraft. There's a lot of it that's just
it's weird, and it's even crazier the fact that we didn't learn at all in school that it was all a result of the end of World War I, like the entirety of like the war, like the
Treaty of Versailles is the root cause of our problems now in terms of borders and.
Yeah, it's like it's still the root cause of so many things. We never learned about that. We never learned about the fact that France and Britain took over the Middle East after the Ottoman Empire fell. They tried to democratize and westernize the Middle East. They rejected it, and then that birthed the world of like radical Islam.
Sure did. Yep.
Which is like we don't learn they don't teach you about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and they don't, and and it's like we could get into that too. With what because you figure that a public school has an agenda too, right? They have a different interest. And so, that's why I stress it, here that it's a responsibility for media creators to know, current events and past events and how they led to this, right? Because, if you're looking at the space right now, like there's the war in Ukraine, there's the conflict in Israel, so there are a lot of things where as the American military has their hands in, and and it's just for us to get some context about why we're doing the things we're doing. That requires you as a citizen to read history and to read uncomfortable history, read history of of war and what we actually did during the wars that we have perpetrated on the world. So I mean, there's a lot of things there, and as media people, we can't be scared of it. We have to look at it, and because it's going to influence how you see things, in the future. And then also to think about it too is if, as a media person, if you're not looking at that history and you're not understanding where they're coming from, then you are going to become a tool for the system because you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is you're actually, involved in at that point. So.
Yeah. Friend of the show, a guy at Pitt, Jeremiah Cutright, who's a climate scientist. I was talking to him and he was like, humans are really bad at looking on big time scales. We're really
Yes.
bad at looking really far into the future to see what the consequences are going to be. I think the same thing applies for media. Like they keep kind of using the same tactics to trick people into doing stuff.
Have you ever, like, you recommended two books to me before the break, and I
did.
I listened to them both. Now I have one for you if you have not read this one. It's called Manufacturing Consent. Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky.
Yep.
Yeah,
I haven't read it, but
so it's an amazing book to talk about how, media frames are made, and how, like, there's this really kind of structural thing that, that the elite have that we don't really see, and so basically he's talking about how the media is used by those in charge, to produce a certain outcome, and not to say that they're duping the media, but there is a certain amount of there is an act of manipulation to try to get the media to report a specific way.
Yeah, I mean, the most hilarious one was recently when this Epstein stuff came out, and they were like, listen, just because Bill Clinton's name is on the list 27 times is no implication of any wrongdoing. It's like, are we serious with
Sure.
Yeah,
right.
Are you kidding
with
me?
Bill Clinton's track record, I somehow doubt that he has, he's got a clean story to tell about Epstein Island.
You know what's even funnier, too, is that right after that drop, Gavin Newsom and his wife went on a vacation to Mexico with the Clintons. Like, is it not? But I digress. Yeah. That was just like, I saw that and I was like, this is an Onion skit from the early 2000s. Like, that's what this is.
Right. And then, but the problem is because there's so much misinformation out there, and there's just this fire hose of stuff that comes out. Whenever you're starting to look at these things like this, like, it's a spectacular thing to say, well, wow, Clinton and Newsom were together in Mexico, and, and what all that means. But you have to kind of look like, I don't know. I can't remember where I was going with that. What was your question again? I do that sometimes.
I do it too all the time.
Yeah,
I'll be mid-sentence and then I forget where I'm going. No, I get it. But to me, it's like that's kind of crazy, because I know that Newsom is trying to come up. He's trying to run for president. This is like his moment, I guess. And I guess there's some political advice you could get from the Clintons because they've been doing it forever. But
yeah, I mean, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, they do have some things to offer.
I guess,
but neither one of them are their reputations come with an enormous amount of baggage, and so you have to kind of say, well, how much of what Bill Clinton said is actually gonna go, is Gavin Newsom actually gonna pick up? But what you have to consider is that all these men, Obama, Clinton, Jimmy Carter, who else is alive? George W. Bush.
Presidents.
Yeah, I mean,
Bush is alive.
So all, like, what you consider is that they've, especially Clinton and Obama, and Carter for that matter, ran on I don't want to say populist, because that's kind of like, that's a confusing word at this point, but they ran on an agenda of the people, right? And then so that's what they were appealing to. But then if you think about what happens when they get put into that role, right? They don't know about the nuclear suitcase. They don't know about the secret black op programs.
No.
And they don't know the banking system. And then all of a sudden they're put in this chair, and and they have to now deal with all those things and all those influences that come in, the military industrial complex. Because it's like, sort of during 2016, whenever there was Clinton versus Trump, there was also a third party candidate, or actually there were four candidates in that Jill, what's her name, Jill Green, the Green Party.
There was a Green Party candidate, and there was a Libertarian candidate. I think Gary Johnson.
Well, Gary Johnson was who I was referring to. Again, I forgot what was your question? Tell me your question.
It's okay. No, I don't think I had a question per se. I was just talking about, I don't really know. I was bringing up the thing with Newsom in Mexico. That was about the end of where I was.
Oh,
going,
right. Now, I know where I was headed with that now. So take, for example, we somehow elected Gary Johnson as president. Mm-hmm. So this is the person who's, who as a libertarian said, I'm going to end all war. I'm going to pull us out of all these places. Mm-hmm. And then, then they're going to put someone like that in the chair, and they're going to be like, Mr. Johnson, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't. And then all of a sudden you find yourself now you've ran on this, and now you find yourself as completely 100% a tool of the system. You're the mechanic, right? Like, you can't escape it at that point. And so now when you think about, like, Gavin Newsom's talking to old presidents, well, they know something.
They do know
So
something.
and so
They do.
they know something that the average person doesn't know. So I think it's probably a good idea that he talks to other presidents, but doing it in Mexico, I don't know. I don't know if that's the right place.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just, to me. Well, and also, I guess if you do run on an anti-war platform, then you get into office, the people walk in the room and they say, "Hey, man, our whole financial system is tied up in this thing.
Yeah.
Like everything is tied up in this. So if you get us out of there, it's gonna have ramifications in other places in the financial system."
Right. Well, I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand, how the monetary system and how the military and how, basically our existence here in the country are related, right? So, I mean, every single year, the American government, the U.S. government spends, plenty more, much more than they take in taxes, right? And so you have to ask yourself, okay, so if the government doesn't take in enough money to run, but they continue to operate, why am I still paying taxes? Right? Like that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's legit. And then you think, well, okay, so then if they're doing this, and they have all this, they have all this stuff. We keep funding all these wars, but yet they don't have the money to do it. Where's the money coming from? Right, and it comes from the debasement of the current currency, right? So the American dollar every day for that matter is worth less than it was the day before, and that theft is inflation, right? They pull inflation off of that, and that's what they're using to do, to fund war, is because they don't need your consent to like deflate the money. They need your consent to tax you, to take your money to spend on war things, but they don't need your permission to deflate your currency, and that's what they've been doing since Eisenhower said there's a military-industrial complex that you got to be aware of, and sure enough, here we are.
Isn't he still to this day one of the only presidents that actually has like openly said that?
And he's the only one that can, because he's the only one who sat in the seat to know what the end result of what being in charge of the American military means. He's the only one, the only president. Like, I mean, Ulysses S. Grant would have, Washington would have, but I'm trying to think about who else in the modern era.
But there was no military-industrial complex.
No, there wasn't. Not in the same way that we know it now. There probably was, something that had, all of it's intertwined. But I'm sure that it's not like it's not like it is now, where it's like, this thing is a machine, right?
Yeah, where you got like four companies, like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman.
But have you looked to see who owns those companies? I'll give you a hint. There's only 3 of them.
There's 3 people that own them?
No, three companies that own all those other companies. BlackRock,
Vanguard, and State
Street, and BlackRock, right? Like those. And then if you look at the owners of BlackRock and State Street, they own each other.
Yeah, all 3 of them own each other.
This is all megacorp. Right? Yeah, there's one corporation.
It's one giant company. Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing. And they're buying all the single-family homes in the country, and then there's a bill now trying to be passed to get those big corporations to divest from like the single family homes, and that's going to have ramifications in the financial system too.
Well, I mean, it gets even worse than that. Like, so somehow, countrywide, we have made multifamily buildings virtually impossible to build. Right. And then so now if you've made it so that that there's no housing stock, like, or there's no inexpensive way to, or reasonable way to get into it, and we're not putting people together, and we're endorsing this single family homes, that's disenfranchising to like everyone. And then it comes to your point where like now if you can't build multifamily units, and then you have to build single families, and they're just basically making everybody seek into that. So your life is going to be you're going to be a renter your entire life.
It seems like they're trying to create a nation of renters,
right? And not rent like you have a lease in college. I mean, basically, like whenever you purchase your home, you'll be paying on it as if you're owning it, but you're never going to own it, right? It's not going to happen. Like that's the strategy that they have. And will it work for them? It will work until it doesn't, and then
okay, that's interesting. When does it not? Does it eventually flip?
Well, I think think what's going to happen is that, the current financial status of the United States is unsustainable, right? We can't.
I think the entirety of the United States is unsustainable.
Well,
Like
exactly.
The whole country.
But then you say, well, why is it unsustainable? It's because we've devalued the currency. So that tells me that the currency, the next time that there's a financial bubble, it's going to get more and more difficult for them to kick it down the road. And eventually, whenever that collapses, the housing market, the commercial real estate market, that's all gonna crash, right? That's gonna be what crashes.
And that would be the time to be liquid and to get yourself in the door.
Right. It would be, but part of the problem is that if you don't know how money enters our financial system, you'll find that because there is no printing press, right? How do they do it? So they do it through mortgages. Essentially, like you and your family will go and you'll look at a house, you'll buy a house. And you'll talk about what the house costs. That money doesn't exist, right? It's nowhere. You don't have it. The bank doesn't have it. So then when they come down and you start to sign your loan agreements, you're working with your loan officer, printing press starts. The bank gets their money. You now owe the bank that. Where'd the money come from? They invented it. They created it out of thin air,
they just
right?
Kinda...
And so when you have a system like that where the people have no control, it's just going to keep running until it doesn't. And I think the answer to that is that there's going to be some sort of alternate currency that people can't get to, and it exists. It's Bitcoin, right? I mean, I think that's part of what the future holds for your generation, for my generation, my kids, all is to be engaged in and develop this side economy that's outside of the control of the government.
Right. We've talked about this. We talked about this briefly when I was in your office before the break. You do, from what I remember, you kind of think that that's the only one that has a potential to.
You mean a cryptocurrency?
Yeah, out of a crypto, because it does function kind of like gold, where there's a limited supply of it, as opposed to some of these other coins that you can just keep making more.
Right. Well, there's no CEO of Bitcoin, right? There's nobody that runs it. It's really wild how it works, because if you wanted to make a change to the Bitcoin network, you have to put in what's called a Bitcoin improvement proposal, or a BIP, right? And then so they'll have these things that go on, and then basically if you operate a node, which is what if you're going to be in charge of your own finances, you really should. If you run your own node, then you get to vote basically on that software. Like, so if you think that this new development that they've put into the into the Bitcoin ecosystem doesn't work, or isn't good, or doesn't help security, then don't install it, and nobody else will either, and then therefore the improvement fails, right? So it's like probably the most democratic thing on the planet right now, right? And then you mentioned gold. So if the price of gold goes up, what do gold miners do?
They probably would mine
more gold.
You'd mine more, yeah.
And then what happens to the price of gold?
Goes down.
Goes down.
Right.
All right. So so comparing Bitcoin to gold kind of is the right corollary, except for that there's no way possible to mine more Bitcoin. There is 21 million coins. That's it. And and once those are mined out, we can't. The government can't come in and say, well, we're going to devalue the currency and do this thing. They can't do it. They just can't do it. It becomes hard money, and I think that scares out of people, out of the bankers.
Yeah, it does. You can swear if you'd like to.
Oh, okay.
I swear all the time. Yeah, you can do that. Now, this is a question that I have. I'm not even sure if this is like the right question to ask. I don't know what's happened to my Instagram algorithm, but if I scroll, and I wrote an article about this, if I scroll just one too many scrolls, and I am in genuinely, I don't know why, because I don't think I'm this kind of person. And I think everyone hopefully knows that by now. I end up in like this very strange, conspiracy-ridden, populist, right-wing, genuinely racist side of Instagram. It's terrifying. And all they're talking about is the BlackRock and the Vanguard. And I'm sure that like there's some legitimacy to that, but they're talking about it and they're like, Trump's gonna fix it. Can he even?
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, he can't even.
No president can fix it.
He tried to drain the swamp.
It's a lie.
And it
all
didn't.
Of it.
Not to mention that he's a con man anyway. Like I don't. But either way, it's like I don't even think he can do
No,
anything.
he can't, and no president can. And when they say they can, they can't. Like it's like that's one of the things that you have to look at and say and I'm not gonna use those. Do your own research. I'm not gonna say that. Right? I'm not gonna say that, but that's essentially what you have to do is you have to find the context for how the world is. How you're visioning the world through your own eyes. You have to have the context of why you're seeing things the way you are, right? And then and having an understanding and a question of that with it. And social media is great because they great for the for the people pushing informations, because then they know that we're susceptible to information, to information, to spectacular information.
Yeah.
So
you see that Instagram put in, I don't know if you saw this, Instagram put in a new setting on everyone's accounts without telling anybody that it's essentially a further restriction on what is deemed as like dangerous content, and then it'll start filtering things out of your algorithm. You can turn it off. And listen, misinformation's a problem. There are some crazy people, like we know these people are crazy, but I go on a meme page and there's a meme that's restricted content, and it's like a Lego Star Wars meme. It's like, this is crazy. It's like they're restricting things that are memes that are like they're not even political at all. There's nothing political, there's nothing violent, and they'll just get flagged for something. And it's like, so if we're gonna start filtering the algorithms, that's fine, but can we at least pay attention to like what we're actually filtering?
Yeah.
But there's so much content going on to Instagram every day that it's impossible. I would imagine that it's impossible to manage. You need warehouses of people. I mean, I think YouTube has the same problem.
Yeah, Instagram in particular, I'm sort of disappointed by it because whenever I first got on it in 2014, it was amazing. Like it was a great place to connect with other photographers and and to kind of like start to build a following or whatever. And I mean, I think over time, I think I've got probably maybe 1,000 followers at most, on Instagram. But I mean, I had a great time like meeting people in my field, right?
Yeah.
And now when I get on Instagram, I don't get that same thing. I'm fed reels of cats and dogs and goats and bears and things. I mean, and it's cute and all. I mean, I'll watch it.
I am fed
but
that stuff too.
but it's not why I found Instagram in the first place.
Right.
And so, and for me, there is no replacement for Instagram in the way that it was. Right. So it's just I don't know what people who are interested in like photography are doing these days. There's probably something out there that I don't know about, but I'd like that, that having it out there and being able to, have people see it, but I haven't had anything on Instagram go beyond my followers in probably 2 years, right? Everybody that likes it is somebody that I know. Like, and I'm getting very few likes from outside of my network. And I'm even putting things in like I'll put some, newsy things in, sometimes, too. And it goes nowhere. So, I mean, something about Instagram has changed. And so, I don't know.
So from that perspective, yes, that's true, because I'm pretty sure whenever we post stuff, yeah, that's true. And also, so I do get people liking my stuff that I don't know, but it's OnlyFans bots that just have a profile picture and there's a link in the bio and then there's no post, no followers. And it's like, this is not a real person.
Bot. Yeah.
It's a bot. But I don't know. I think I've had maybe a little bit of a different experience. Because I know a lot of photography students at Point Park, and they do a fair bit of connecting with other people on Instagram, but also it is mostly with the same crowd after a while.
Well, right. And also, 20-year-old kids are far more motivated to do things than me, right?
That's
true. I got when I really kind of stopped doing, marketing myself for work, paying attention to Instagram and making sure that what I was what I'm seeing and looking at became less important.
Right.
And so for me, it's kind of fallen out of favor. Now, I would think that that a young person has a different frame of how they see everything, and that Instagram probably works with a certain demographic. But like I'm not trying to connect. I'm not trying to connect the people of Gen X or Boomer. I'm not trying to do that. Like on Instagram, I want there to be. I want to have a broader following than just this one demographic, which I think is, Facebook is notorious for skewing old. Like, and that's part of the same ecosystem. So I think they're doing the same thing. Is if you have a Facebook algorithm, they're tying that to your Instagram algorithm, and they're skewing you older and not giving you good stuff.
Oh, that's a good point because they're both owned by the same company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Instagram. I delete Instagram every couple of months just because enough is enough with it gets ridiculous. And now I don't know why. I genuinely don't follow any of these accounts that are putting up this crazy content. It's not even crazy content. It's like, I think a part of what I would call like conspiracy culture is just interpreting everything in the worst possible light that you possibly can.
Yeah, and I think you're probably onto something that, there probably are some conspiracies where there are, powerful agents acting against, certain things, but I think it's not not as clear, but we're not, as consumers, we're not privy to what's happening at the top,
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that's been going on. Well, so the Iowa caucus just happened. Big shocker. Trump blew everyone out of the water. The one with the biggest margin since I think Bob Dole. I think I saw someone said like the biggest like margin victory. Nikki Haley won like one county, and Ramaswamy's out.
Yeah,
he's out. So it's a.
I really didn't acknowledge his entrance. So
right.
The exit. I'm sort of. Oh, good.
He's interesting. I know some conservatives that don't trust him because they think that because the right wing populist type, they hate George Soros. Whoever, I don't even know. He's some billionaire. They don't like him.
Well, I find it really humorous about George Soros because as a person who's been in the media, and supposedly of the people who dislike George Soros, they also dislike college professors, right? And institutions like that. And so I can recall there was a protest in Market Square after Obama won the first time in like 2000, and it was in 2009 or so. And there was a protest over there, like the Tea Party,
the Tea Party movement, yeah.
The Tea Party, and I went over there, and they're like, oh, we don't want to talk to you, and I had a camera, and they're like, well, it's like I'm not really a journalist, I'm a college professor. Even worse, yeah. This is you're all owned by George Soros, and I'm like, man, last time I checked my bank account, I would, George Soros, if you're writing checks, my address is 125. So I mean, like, it's not happening. It's absolutely insane to think that this one person is writing all these checks and controlling all these people. It's absolute, like,
yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sure that
we're not smart enough as people to coordinate that well. Like we don't have the ability to do that and to like give them credit, like to give like George Soros, who I don't even think lives in the United States. I think he lives in China. I
don't even know who he really is. I just know that people don't like him.
He was a European. I don't know what he did, but he's a European billionaire. And then I don't think he's I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I like I said, he has no impact on my life. He's not cutting me checks.
Yeah. All I know is that people don't like him, and people thought that like he funded Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign. They were like, this guy's a George Soros owned. And I don't even. But either way, he's out. He was slightly interesting to me for a brief moment in time. Maybe just because he's young. I don't know. But and then the hilarious part is that Nikki Haley's like, this is a 2-horse race between me and Trump, and it's like you're not even beating DeSantis. Like,
yeah,
you don't even have that.
Well, that is definitely an entertaining show over there for sure.
I mean, it's all theater at this point. It's theater. But
hey, just keep in mind, land doesn't vote. Right? Land doesn't vote.
That's true.
So
land does not.
So get your people to vote, and then you don't have to worry about that stupid map that they put out to say, look, how did you not win? Look, all this red. It's like, well, there's 7 people in Wyoming.
Yeah. That's so true. That is, yeah. I mean, because there are some counties out there that have been red forever, and then there are some like counties in like Massachusetts that have been blue forever, something like that. But So we're gonna get Trump and Biden again, probably.
Yeah, unfortunately, and and nobody wants this.
Nobody wants it. That's the crazy part. Is like literally, I don't talk to a single person that is like. I know people that have maybe that look fondly on Joe Biden's presidency because of various things that he has done, but no one is like. I don't think anyone's thrilled.
No, and and you also have to consider too that what I was saying before about once you're in that position, about what your view is as president, and the things that you're in charge of and you're not in charge of. So Biden and Trump both share that in common, that they both know what they both know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean they're obviously on different sides of the spectrum, but they're both operators of the same system.
Yes.
Right? And
yeah.
but you have to, you then, because we get no choice in America, the illusion of choice that we have, people, and no matter what happens at the end of the day, whomever is president, like I said, is going to be in charge of the system, and there's going to be people to answer to, the bankers, the, other folks, the, corporate leaders, other people that are going to want to have, an answer to that. And then so it boils down to me it boils down like this to me is that, if those are the only two choices that I have, right? Two geriatrics, two people who I can't relate to, who are older than my dead grandparents, right? It's like I mean, I have to look at this and say, geez, oh man, how are my children going to stay away from the war machine? That's why I vote the way that I do. And I'm certainly absolutely not going to vote for the fascist. That's simply not it. And to say, well, I mean, we're in America. Who does that leave? Who does that leave you? Like a responsible choice, a responsible vote is to vote for the other guy, right? Is to vote for the person who's not the fascist.
Right.
And, it's like I've spent a lot of time, in my, young person career, in the middle between, Republicans and Democrats, and I actually considered myself, a libertarian at one point in time. I don't really identify with that as much anymore. I don't recognize that in myself anymore. Like I've kind of moved away from that point of view, and I think it skews young, right? I think that's an idea. You're idealist. You want something to happen, and and it's like they present this third party, and it's great. We're all going to get behind it, and then then you vote, and then you feel like at the end of the time, like, okay, well, I voted for the third guy or the third person, and the person that I didn't want to win still won, right? And so to me, it's like, it sucks we're in this system. Until the system changes, this is what we deal with, and I'm absolutely going to vote for whomever is not about war, fascism, those kind. That's a hard stop. And if we ever wind up where there's a person where we have two candidates that are endorsing both of these same things, I'm moving to Costa Rica.
Right, you're out.
Yeah,
I'm
done. Like it's like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. So when you say if you don't mind me doing this, decoding that, because Trump didn't get us into really any wars.
No.
And Joe Biden got us out of Afghanistan.
He didn't.
Actually,
Trump did that. Trump got us out of Afghanistan. It just happened on Joe Biden's watch, right? Like,
yeah.
But Trump's reasoning for doing it wasn't the honorable one to get our soldiers out of harm's way, to bring peace to Afghanistan. It was to F over Biden is what it was for. It was a political move. That's it. And it's like, that's shady. And that's not cool. And, all the people in the military are now pawns at that point. And it's like,
that's the thing that really pisses me off, is that you have these people that sign up believing that they're doing something good.
Well, that's exactly what I thought.
The country.
I thought it was, I had that idealism that, hey, when I signed up in 1992, I mean, it was still, you figure you're 45 years from the end of World War II. There's still people alive. I mean, this was still, in the 90s, it was like all the memes are true about how life was in the 90s. And then so, I weighed my options. I said, well, I can go to the military and I can get college for free. And then what's the likelihood I'm actually going to go to war? And my calculus said it's not going to happen in the next 4 years, right? And I was right. Like, I got lucky. My mother's like, oh my God, I don't know how that happened. You're so lucky. I didn't want you to join anyway. But, I mean, I don't know. I lost my train of thought again.
It's all right. But yeah, so
this is ridiculous. This is what happens when you turn 50.
This is the
So don't turn 50.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
I'll skip that one. I'll go right to 51. But yeah, and then I don't know. It's tough to. I used to be a lot more optimistic. I think I still am kind of optimistic, but it's just tough. I mean, I don't know. Is it like get off social media? Like, you don't want to ignore it, but social media has been so genuinely unhelpful.
Yeah, I don't participate on Facebook anymore.
Yeah, I've never participated in Facebook.
Well, good for you.
I never go on Twitter. I've never been on Twitter. I've never really been on Facebook.
Well, I mean, on Facebook, when it came out, I think I was one of the early adopters. I've probably had an account at Facebook since like nearly the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I had a .edu address, so I logged on probably 2004 or 5 as soon as I really heard about it, because you could only have like a .edu to get on initially.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because it was about college students, and so at that point in time, I mean, I was only 4 or 5 years out of college, so it still felt relevant. And I mean, I'd had a lot of fun with it. I made a lot of friends. I've connected with people that I would not otherwise not have connected with, and then then all this was fine, and then 2016 happened, and then I found myself posting politically contentious items and having arguments with people I didn't know or people that I did know and didn't really want to get in arguments with. So I said, this isn't helping me psychologically. So I've essentially left. I still have an account there, and I post like a proof of life thing for like my out of town family and whomever else.
Yeah, proof of life. That's what I do on Instagram.
But I've completely divorced myself from using Facebook as a useful thing. I mean, in my community, even in my like local community, Facebook is completely useless to try to talk to your community members. It's one-sided. It's completely, like, at least in my town, it is completely occupied by one part of the spectrum, and the other side of the spectrum has absolutely no social media voice whatsoever. And so, I don't know. I don't want to spend time in places where there are people I don't like.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
So, I don't know. My social media at this point, I mean, I'm on X to observe. I've always been there to observe, and I mean, Instagram is it, and then Reddit. I'm on Reddit a lot.
I'm on Reddit sometimes. I'm really trying to phase out Snapchat. Snapchat's like, I've got to get rid of it. I message Gavin a lot on Snapchat. Is there something else can we do something else?
Yeah, I mean, why don't you just use your iMessage? I mean, it's encrypted, probably
He's
more
got an
so.
Android.
Oh, well, you see, but that here's something else. That somebody walked into, the Apple development room, and I mean, this is a story that was related from social media, so it's secondhand. But someone, went into the room and said, "Hey, I've invented this program that's iMessage for Android," and they're like, "Yeah, no." We're not going to do that. They buried it. They buried it. So I mean, the software, the program exists, but Apple has decided that no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, I've been trying to get rid. I said it multiple times. I'm trying to get rid of Snapchat. Eventually, I'm just going to do it.
Just Signal. Just if you want to talk with your with friends. I mean, if you're looking for an alternative, that Signal is the way to do it.
Because if I could, I would just text message everyone.
Yeah.
I would just use iMessage.
Yeah.
For everything.
And yeah, I mean, and I think that's a smart way, because like that message on Snapchat, I mean, somebody else sees it. You're going through an intermediary, somebody sees it.
Yeah.
Right. There's something else out there, and so if you really want your messages to be to be secure and private, you have to end-to-end encryption everything, and that means whether Facebook tells you or not that the messages are encrypted. I don't believe them. I have more faith in Apple in Signal than I do in Mark Zuckerberg doing the right thing. And so so if you're working with an encrypted end-to-end device, and that's where I would default to do all of my communicating, would be there.
Yeah.
Signal, Telegram, one of those ones that is that doesn't have access from law enforcement, that requires a warrant to get your to get your information.
It would be hilarious if we actually got telegrams, like we actually just got them, and we had to like learn how to.
Oh, you mean like Morse code?
Yeah, yeah, like an actual one. We just go back to that. But Yeah, and what do you think about AI? What do you think AI is going to do in the 2024 election cycle? What do you think it's going to do at Point Park? Is there any conversation at Point Park about how to implement AI into curriculum and stuff like that?
Yeah, in fact, I put it on my syllabus last semester, and we
Mhm.
ran out of time. It's on my syllabus this semester, and we are not going to run out of time. We're
Right.
going to do it this year. Um, uh, so, what do I think? I think that if you're not media savvy, you're in big, big trouble. Like if you're not questioning the media already, and you're walking into this sort of like without much media literacy, you're screwed. You're
Mhm.
totally screwed. Like, and
Yeah,
I don't know, I don't know what to tell people about it. Except that what I do know is that AI is not sentient. AI still has a corporate overlord, so whatever comes out of it shouldn't be trusted. In the same way that you wouldn't trust information, other information that you get from the internet.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that there are some benefits to it, and I think that those are still to be figured out as to what we're gonna how it's gonna benefit things, And I look at it like this, right? So in Pittsburgh in the 80s or in the late 70s, this place was a one pony town, like it's steel mills. That was it.
Mhm.
So the steel mills, like virtually overnight, like it was like literally less than a year that everybody went from like this like feeling of euphoria, like we've all got jobs, this community's great. 6 months later, it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Mhm.
And so Pittsburgh was not a place to really be. But then what happened over that time is that it evolved into other industries. We became, a medical center. We became an education center. There's other, glass. There's other like AI, robotics, other things that have happened here in Pittsburgh that have
Mhm.
developed over time. And so all the people who were employed at a steel mill, right? So, yes, it was a disruption for them, but their children have now adapted to the economy that is in place here, and it works. And so that's going to be the same thing with AI. There are going to be people who are going to say, this is going to ruin my job, this is going to kill my job. Yeah, it might, but your children and even you, what as the person who's losing their job, you have an opportunity to retrain and do other things. There are going to be businesses and industries that emerge around AI that we don't even know. We haven't even thought of them yet.
No, that's the interesting part, is to see what it's going to create, because there's no way that I would say there's no way even in the 90s that anyone could have predicted a Twitter.
No,
No way.
no.
There's just no way that you could have predicted. There's no way that anyone in the internet really became a thing in like the late 80s and the early 90s, or am I a little off
Well,
there?
you're probably a little bit off, right? So, I mean, my first experience with the internet happened in probably 1982 or 83. My father was an amateur radio operator, and he got into like they were like, as an amateur radio operator, they're always exploring new communication tools and methods. And so
Mhm.
they were working on the internet. Like they basically set up the first bulletin boards and things. And so that was really my first exposure to it, and I never thought of it again until I got into the military. And then my roommate was like, "Hey, I'm buying a computer. I've got this cool thing called America Online. Want to check it out with me?" I'm like, "Never heard of it."
America
America
Online?
Online.
What was that? I haven't heard of that.
It was a messaging, like an internet service provider. You would use it like when you'd get on you'd have to connect your telephone to your computer, and it would do that noise, beep beep beep, sure,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
that whole thing. And that connected through America Online, like 15 kilobits per second, super slow. And then basically it was like the first social messaging app, like so you could like talk to other people. You could get on message boards and have conversations with people. So it was like really, I'd probably say that probably happened in 94, 95. That was like that I saw
Okay.
that. And then I never really got into the internet until I got to Slippery Rock. And then I was issued an email address and a 3.5-inch floppy disk that had a program called Eudora on it, and I would have to take that and put that into the machine, run the program, and that's how it would get my email. Was basically we had to carry around a little floppy disk
Wow.
for that.
But either way, like no one predicted that
Nobody.
either. No one
Nobody.
predicted. So yeah, that's a good point that it's gonna. Yeah, that's the thing that's a little bit concerning, is whenever I do end up in those really strange places on Instagram, I think, God, some of these people, if they're even real, which I don't even know that, they could be bots.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's easy to tell, but sometimes it's like I don't even know, but some people are going to be falling apart.
Yep. I'm going to say the same thing that I said about currency, that I said with about social media, right? Is that if you can find a social media network that's decentralized and not controlled by, a corporation, then that's kind of where you want to be. And that doesn't
Is that a thing?
that doesn't quite exist. There's one that's really close.
Okay.
It's called Nostr, Nostr, and it's Jack Dorsey from Twitter is the lead of this project.
Interesting.
And so it's a decentralized social network like Mastodon or something else. And so basically they're relying on the users to run the nodes and the servers. And so that makes it so that the control of the algorithm, one person isn't in charge of it. Like it becomes much more of a collective thing. And so, I think in reality, people are going to have to get sick and tired of corporate control of literally everything and take things back. And, there are systems in place to do it. It's just that they have to become popularized, and the mass media now has absolutely no interest in giving you options.
Is that where the world's going to go? Is this sort of decentralized? No, is this Nostr? Is that built on the blockchain?
It is related to Bitcoin in some way, basically because what they've done is they've financially incentivized posting. So essentially, if you are going to get on and make a post, it will cost you a nickel or whatever, less than a nickel. And then so you can say something, contentious and pay a nickel for it, and then everybody will look at it and say, boy, that's stupid. Like I'm not I'm not, and then for them to reply to it, it's going to cost them a nickel.
Oh,
and you see, so then if you're saying something that's positive and resonates with the community, then you're going to people are going to pay you, and your message is going to get out. But if they don't pay you, then you're just going to fizzle and die. And artificially right now on Twitter, they can turn the dial and make anyone viral.
Yeah.
Anyone. And then it's not on merit, it's on agenda. And then so with something like where you're in a decentralized space where there's no apparent one singular authority, and if you go viral, you're really truly have something that's appealing to the masses. Like truly. That's kind of what I look at.
That's probably what it was like in the very early days of YouTube. When some of those very first videos went viral. I mean, I don't know how the YouTube algorithm works, but I assume that before it became kind of corporatized in the way that it was now, it was probably a little bit more like that, where if something was genuinely good, then it went viral. Yeah. Instead of the algorithm just deciding to... I mean, I swear every month a new Hulu show gets injected into my YouTube algorithm. I'll just get shorts for some show that I'm never going to watch. I don't care.
Yeah, algorithms.
So I guess, is that the... I guess maybe that's where the world's going to go. Everything just being, or at least more and more things being decentralized eventually.
I would think it's in our interest as human beings to have a decentralized a decentralized system. And if you look at everything like prior to the Civil War, it's exactly how it was, right? So, and and another thing to kind of think about, being a young person, and this show is going to go out to your peers. If you think about the lifestyle that we live right now, right? Okay, it's the success of consumerism, this fast pace, this high,
the consumerism. Listen, I've said this too. No, I'll make this quick. I just want to interrupt you, but the corporate capitalism stuff's out of control. Not a fan. The local mom and pop shop stuff, I am a fan of, but this the consumerism is absolutely out of control in this country.
And and it is, and it's also unnatural in the terms of human history. All right, because human beings have a history on the planet. They're estimating somewhere between 400 and 250,000 years, and you're thinking for all that time, were we stupid for that point? That we're not they weren't as smart as us now. I mean, they're human beings. They're just as smart as us 250,000 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
So then you ask yourself, well, then so we've emerged and evolved, and we got to this point right now where this has happened. And if you look at this, what we're experiencing right now as human beings is unnatural in terms of our human history.
Yeah,
and so. That means to me that we have a sustainable way of doing things and we have an unsustainable way of doing things. When that unsustainable way of doing things becomes to the failure point, we're going to go back to the way that we were sustainable before. So I think that the broad history of human beings, we should be looking at that and saying, well, how am I going to adapt my life to live, in a decentralized state, as a person that has to, that interacts differently with everyone, and the government has a completely different role in a system like that, if it even exists, in the way that we understand government to run right now. But so, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the previous, human experiences and saying what we have right now, literally one generation got to experience their life like completely in this fictitious scheme that we're running. That's the baby boomers, right? They were born into it, and it's been about them and about their experience this entire time. And everybody that comes after them, I mean, me being a Gen X person, I had some of that, but it became pretty clear, in the late 90s that there was going to be no letting people from my generation in charge of anything. And if you think about this, I'm 50 years old, and I became chairman when I was 49. That was the first opportunity I've ever had to become, to move up to evolve into a position of management.
Yeah.
Every other single place I've ever worked, and even Point Park, that has never been, I have never, ever had the opportunity. And the reason why is because people weren't moving on. People weren't, people weren't living their life. They're completely engaged in the capitalist economy. And I can tell you for certain that whenever I reach, the first point where I'm eligible to retire, I'm going to be looking at it really hard, because I am not the kind of person I don't want to be in this job and be ineffective. I don't want to be in it for my ego. And I want to, and plus I want to live my life. Like I'm hoping that, that by the time that happens, that we have had, we've gotten through the current cataclysm and we're back into like a more, stable period, and I can enjoy, the end of my life. That's my dream. But if it doesn't happen that way, it doesn't happen that way. But like I said, I have no interest in working beyond my, beyond my earliest retirement age, because it's just like, it's not fair. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to my wife. It's not fair to my family, and it's not fair to my talented, employees that are beneath me, or that are not beneath me in that way, but they're just, they're next in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm so flabbergasted with, with the leadership that we've had in the country over the past 20 years. I've been begging somebody from the millennials or Gen Z to get in charge. And believe me, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the guy that's like, oh, I'm opening the door. You can come on in. I'm out. I'm going to walk away.
Yeah. Well, that's
it.
Like,
I'm just going to be out.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like the boomers won't leave. They won't do it. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, and I don't want to bash on them, but but they have their own decision-making process, and like I said, if you think about it in the frame of reference of their life, this consumer culture is theirs.
It is,
right, and of course they want to continue to participate in it, and and it's like, and it's mine and yours and ours by proxy, but we don't own it. We don't have to engage in that system. We can change it, and we should, and and as time goes on, they will leave, they will die, they will move on, and then people from my generation, who I've talked to a lot of folks, my age, and we're all talking about retirement now, right? Because we're starting to all get our AARP notices in the mail that says you should join, and so we're all having these conversations about like, well, what are you going to do? First moment. Everybody's telling me that the first financially possible moment they're going to retire, they're going to do it. Right. Which is different now, because a lot of the people who are still working, of that generation, are already financially figured out. Right. Yeah. And they don't really need to do the work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm just ready to move out of the way when it's time.
And I respect the hell out of that, because I think that's kind of what needs to happen. And like you said, with the leadership, I Googled it. George Bush is 77 years old. Can you guys imagine for just a brief moment if he ran again? Can you just imagine, hypothetically, he's allowed to, and he runs again? Can you imagine?
Well, he's the spring chicken of the three of them.
I know, he's younger than all of them. Can you imagine? It would actually be better age-wise if George Bush was like, I'm back.
Well,
which, by the way, he was a far worse president for this country than Obama, Biden, and Trump almost like put together.
Yeah, he has some things, but he was a nice guy that you could have a beer with. That's why we don't look at him the same way that we look at other people like that.
He dragged us through the war and ruined the nation of this image abroad.
To bring this point home about generations, and about who's in charge of things, it's like, so, I'm looking at, the political spectrum out there now and saying, well, who from my generation, would make a good president, right? And it's like, and I can only come up with at the moment, like, the one that I see that's the most, prominent, possible candidate for president of my generation would be Gavin Newsom, right? Mm-hmm. And and it's like, well, we're running Biden, or they're running Biden, right? And and so he, if he's elected, that's 4 more years where there's not a Gen X president, and in 4 years' time, is Gavin Newsom still going to be interested? Is there going to be anyone else of my generation that's going to be there? And I'm betting, and I've said this for a long time, that Gen X will have no president. We will not have a president.
Really?
The silent generation didn't have a president. Well, I think they do now, because I think Biden is not a baby boomer. I think he's the one before that. I think he's a
how old
silent.
is he? He's 7. Is he in his 80s?
I thought so.
Jesus Christ.
I think he's 80.
So he was born in the 60s.
No.
50s. I'm doing math all wrong.
Like the 40s or the 40s are at the latest, like 1939
oh my God,
would make him 80. Like he could be 80.
I just did the worst math of all time in my head just then. Yeah,
the 30s or the 40s.
And my grandfather was born in 39.
Yeah.
No, 38.
Oh, he's born in 42? Biden? Yeah, okay. So
so he's before the boom.
Well,
kind of a
I don't know. That's really kind of a thing. I mean, the baby boom technically started, August 6th, 1945, right? When the day the war ended, right? That's whenever, like, everybody who was born after that point is considered a baby boomer if you're born before it. But effectively, Joe Biden, his formative years were all about this in that culture.
Yeah.
So but I mean, it just.
So you think Gen X will not have a president?
I don't think so.
You think Gen Z will have a president?
I hope so. I mean, I hope so. I hope somebody comes along, in the next, couple years. But I mean, we have structural issues. Like, I mean, me rooting for a generational president to come along. It's like, really what I should be rooting for is a complete change to the system, and hoping that the millennials and Gen Z are the leaders of that effort. With my support, I'm ready to take orders, right? I'm ready to step in and help. I don't, because I'm not in a position to lead it. I don't want to lead it. I want this, whatever movement comes next, I want to have the longest possible incubation period, like so that it has the most time to go. And if that means skipping my group and making it so that whatever happens next is better, I'm all for that. I'm 100% for that.
I would say that from what I don't know about you, but from what I've experienced, a lot of our generation's fed up with the two-party system. It seems like a lot of millennials, I would imagine, are probably at least a little sick of it. But I think our generation especially is like, we've got to at least try to change something, because it doesn't seem like it's working for us anymore. Well, that's the way that I've felt.
Well, when the United States started, there were no such thing as political parties. This is something that came.
Yeah, and George Washington told us not to do it, and we didn't listen to him because we're idiots.
Yeah, and then and so now you're now we're into this. We've made certain changes to the Constitution, over time that have minimized the ability for third parties to come in. And. I think what's the 17th Amendment changed the direct election of your senators to allow the people to directly elect their senator. And I mean, if you think about what the Constitution defined as a senator, or how they were supposed to function, they were supposed to be representatives of the state, right? So if you wanted to fire your senator, you fired your governor. That's how you did it. Right.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And so now we directly elect our senator. And so, think about that. Like, so now you've disconnected it. You now, like, they've weakened the ability, they've weakened our ability to make change on that. And, and over time, it's just, you just keep weeding out these things and honing this down until you get the system that you want. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about the elite, the system that they want. It's over time that they've built it, and Yeah, and then here we are, because I mean, we started out as a country without political parties, and whenever we did get political parties early on, you had the Whigs, you had the Bull Moose, you had several other parties that had opportunities to get into that national stage, and right now the only people who independently can do it, are independently wealthy, right? Like Gary Johnson was the governor of New Mexico. He came with a political establishment and a war chest to even get in the race in 2016. And then for my lifetime, Ross Perot ran for president against George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and he split the Republican vote, and that allowed Clinton to be elected president, because had Ross Perot not entered the race, George Bush would have won a second term, right? We would have continued on with that. And I don't know what the world would look like now had we continued along that line, of electing, going that way, and continuing to elect George Bush and people like Ronald Reagan and other folks like them. But yeah, I don't know. It's a two-party system. I don't know how to change it. But I think, looking at the 17th Amendment, or about repealing the 17th Amendment and making it so that the senators are now, really do represent the state instead of corporate interests, right?
Yeah.
That's who they're representing now. We vote for them, but their overlords are corporations and not the governor. See, and I kind of would like to go back to that, because if we didn't particularly like our senator, then the governor's up for election in 3.5 years. He's out, and then the next appointments that come in will be more representative of that. So,
Yeah. Do you think that DeSantis is gonna split the Republican vote enough that, because we were talking about this, I don't know if Biden beats Trump in 2024.
What happens if Trump is in jail? Right?
That's a thing. He could just run it. I mean, he would probably be like, "I'll just run it from the can."
Well, I'm
slammer.
sure that people were going to want him to do that, but I mean, if you're the kind of person that finds that to be acceptable, I don't really want to spend a lot of time with people like that. I mean, because it's not,
to run it from,
to run it, like to say that no, it's okay that we've got a criminal running our country from prison, and I'm cool with that. Are you for real? Like that? Like you can't be serious with that. And so, I don't know. Is Ron DeSantis talking about running independent against Trump?
I mean, right now, so I've talked to a lot of. So first of all, people have been throwing around the Trump will get arrested and thrown in jail thing. They've been throwing that around for what, 6 years?
Yeah,
at this point?
But justice does move slow, right? The guy is going to pay the piper in some way. He is not going to get off scot-free. But whether that means we're going to elect him president again as the reward for all that is still unknown. But
yeah. But I've talked to some younger Gen Z conservatives, and there's a bit of a split. Like, a lot of them are looking at DeSantis as their guy. Some of them are still with Trump. I guess it depends if young people come out to vote.
Well, you have to.
Historically, young people have not turned out to vote.
I say that every fall. In spring, every fall of my class is about who's registered to vote. You should go register to vote, because I mean, it's like if you wanted to, if Gen Z and the millennials wanted to, you could outvote everyone. Right now, we don't have to do anything. All you have to do is come out to vote, in April for our primary, and then in November for the general election. If you would win, your candidates would win. Like, there's just, the mathematics simply doesn't work without gerrymandering for any other outcome, right? If you show up to vote, you'll beat all that. And that's what matters. I can't carry it, but you guys, the two generations below, two largest living generations. I mean, you have the numbers right now to win in November.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because I think that from what I've seen, Ron DeSantis is, Vivek was trying to position himself as a Gen Z candidate. I think that Ron DeSantis is, from what I've seen, sort of trying to do the same thing, at least a little bit.
He's a Gen X person. He can't make himself into anything else. Like, I mean, he was born in like a year, like 74 or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's like like January 1, 1973 is the dead center, the middle of Gen X. So if he tries to claim he's anything else other than that, it's
Oh no, he's saying that he is Gen X, but he's positioning himself as like he's trying to pick up the Gen Z vote. He's trying to position himself as like he's trying to pick up younger people, I guess, because I guess if you're looking at looking at it logistically, Trump maybe the only way to get more votes than Trump is if you try to mobilize millennial and Gen Z conservatives.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of older people are going to break for Trump.
Yeah, probably. Not this guy though.
No, I mean not I. But what does do you still optimistic about the future in any sense? You got anything that gives you hope?
Yeah, I mean, like kind of this whole thing we've been talking about, gives me hope, right? Like, I mean, just this as being here in this seat, talking with you, knowing that the generations that are that are emerging are have a sense and have an idea and want to see things different, and I'm all for that. Yeah.
What's been your favorite part of your job, you think?
The favorite part of my job, without a doubt, is seeing students do better, do better than me. And I haven't really, I wouldn't consider my career to be, like I've had all these great things. I've had things that I've been proud of and things I've liked, but I've enjoyed watching students beat that, like just do things that I could wow, that's I can't even imagine how'd they even think of that to do that. Like that's the kind of stuff that I like. And over 22 years, I've seen quite a bit of that. There's been some folks who've done some really kind of interesting things and are still doing stuff. So,
I've been asking a lot of guests this because I'm just interested in kind of where everyone's at. What do you think the American identity is right now?
You mean from our perspective or from outsiders' perspective?
I guess from both or whatever you think is interesting to you.
I think that the because I've been to 11 different countries, and I've spent some time outside of the country, and and what we get is you get a lot of the American stereotypes. Like we eat bad food. It's just that that there's everybody's rolling coal and doing all burning gas and doing all these things, and so the impressions from the outside are like, I don't think that they're entirely positive about the American culture as a whole. But on an individual basis, I've never felt anything but support and love and grace from from people, like from the places I've been. They've never treated me personally as an American as in a negative way. But our discussions, certainly there's some concerns about the American culture from outside of the country. And then I think from inside of the country, you have two different schools. You have the folks who are still believing that in American exceptionalism, and then you have those folks that don't. And I think the folks that don't are probably in the right camp. Because, I mean, America is simply another country on the planet, and it has its own issues and its own problems, just like everybody else. The only thing that makes America exceptional is that we have manipulated the money system to control it, to print it to our will. That's the difference between America and everywhere else.
Do any of the scientific discoveries or the technological feats? Does any of that stuff?
CRISPR is awesome, right? That's like the gene editing software, or and it's like not even software. It's like a thing they do in the lab. Like it's like, so I mean, I find that to be completely cool. And and the fact that that when COVID hit, they got a hold of the virus and they ran it through a computer.
Yeah, they mobilized really fast.
And it came and outspit the the formula for the vaccine. And think about AI doing that. Like it can postulate and think about compounds that don't even exist yet that can beat bacteria, viruses, or whatnot. So I mean, I think from that point of view, you combine some of the medical things that are going to happen. I mean, I think it's like you can make America healthier completely. If we chose to do it. But first step is like stop going to your local McDonald's.
Yeah, I mean, stop eating the Yeah,
Stop eating it. Just don't do it. Like
Yeah.
if you don't, I mean, because you're not going to, like a protest isn't going to work, right? You're not going to go protest out in front of Wendy's and say, close your door. It's not going to happen. But if you and me and him and everybody else, decide that like, okay, I'm finished eating that type of food, and we do that in mass, like the market's going to force them to do something different.
Yeah, it'll change. Yeah, I mean, I worked at Wendy's for 1 year, my freshman year of high school, and as soon as I made the chili one time, I vowed that I would never consume it again.
Yeah.
For as long as I lived, because I made it, and I was like, this is nasty. All right, Professor Rolinson, I think we're gonna wrap.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
That's great. Well, I hope this was what you were looking for.
Absolutely, I had a great time.
Yeah, and I mean, I love being on podcasts. So if any of your peers are listening to this and they have a podcast,
Let's do it.
All doors are open here. I'm happy to talk about it. Maybe we get into some other things, that are like,
sure.
I don't know, just different. Maybe not so politically.
Next time we'll do something different.
Yeah, I mean, but like I said, I have no issue talking about politics or what it is, because it matters. Like this matters, and I feel it's valuable for for your generation to hear from people like me who are I am completely in favor of a change and to do some things, and I know we talked in my office, and I kind of want to put this so that it's on there. It's like we talked briefly about the generational cycles, about and we're in there's 80-year cycles that have been walked back to the Reformation in like 1530 or whatever, and it's been every 80 years there's been this cycle. 80 years ago was World War II, and right now we're in part of this cataclysmic change, this fourth turning, and so once we're through that, the world is going to be a different place. If you look at every turning, after every 80 years has been an economic change every single time in how we've done it, right? So 80 years before, now was World War II. Before that, we had the gold standard, right? And then 80 years before that was the Civil War, where we had chattel slavery, which was the part of the economy. 80 years before that, it was the Revolutionary War, right? So all these things are, and we're in that zone right now, right? So history tells me that we're going to face a cataclysm. Typically speaking, over time, it's been war, but but the end result, it's always economic. And so, and I'm just looking downstream, seeing where our global economy is right now, how our dollar works. That it seems to me that the big crisis that's coming down the line that we're going to have to get through is financial. And then once we're through that, I think we're in a different spot, better spot.
It'll be interesting to see. The next 10 years are going to be wild.
Yeah,
they're going to be crazy.
I think by 2030 we'll be settled. The shift, the transfer of wealth and the generational shift will have happened by 2030, and there'll be a whole different country completely at that point.
Well, we'll come back. We'll do another one.
Yeah, we'll do it in 10 years. Right, the Remind Me app on Reddit, right? Remind me.
We'll do 6 years in the future. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
all
anytime, man. And when you get famous, we'll do it again.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.